dive into today's episode, I just want to remind you to hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us. It helps us grow, reach more amazing learners like you, and keep bringing you fresh and fun content every week. So don't forget, like, subscribe, and let's keep this journey going strong. Hello, brilliant idiom explorers, and a very warm welcome back to another insightful episode of Idiom Insights. I'm Emma, your enthusiastic guide, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here with you again, ready to delve into the fascinating nuances of some more common English phrases. It's always a distinct pleasure to share this learning journey with all of you, our dedicated listeners, as we uncover the richness of the English language together.
And I'm Jack, your co-host and ever-curious word detective, here to help unravel the meanings and perhaps share a chuckle or two as we explore the wonderfully colorful landscape of idiomatic English. It's truly wonderful to be back in the Idiom Insights studio, Emma. And a big hearty hello to all our fantastic listeners tuning in from various corners of the world. Thank you so much for joining us once again.
It's always a genuine joy, Jack. Today, we've meticulously selected 4 incredibly useful and vivid idioms that you'll undoubtedly encounter in everyday English, whether in conversation, movies, or books. Understanding these will not only significantly boost your comprehension of native speakers, but also provide you with more natural, nuanced, and expressive ways to communicate your own thoughts, feelings, and observations effectively. These particular idioms cover some very interesting concepts, hidden dangers lurking beneath a harmless facade, expressing very strong agreement, understanding how situations can escalate, and the difficult decision of stopping something completely.
A truly excellent and wonderfully varied mix for our listeners today, Emma. These are definitely idioms that really add significant flavor and depth to any conversation, making your English sound much more fluent and authentic. Here are the 4 idioms we'll be diving into in this episode of Idiom Insights. First, an idiom for someone who appears harmless or even friendly, but is actually quite dangerous or malicious: wolf in sheep's clothing. Second, a very common phrase used to show incredibly strong agreement with what someone has just said: you can say that again. Third, an evocative expression for a situation where something relatively small at the outset starts to grow or become more significant at an ever-increasing rate: snowball effect. And finally, our 4th idiom for today, which signifies stopping or discontinuing something, especially a project, initiative, or even support: pull the plug.
Those are all fantastic and very common idioms, Jack, each one truly effective in its own right. Each one indeed paints a very clear and memorable picture and is used with considerable frequency in a multitude of contexts, so understanding them thoroughly will be incredibly beneficial for our listeners as they navigate English conversations with greater confidence and skill.
I couldn't agree more, Emma. They're all exceptionally practical and useful. And before we delve into the fascinating intricacies of our first idiom, a quick and sincere request from both of us here at Idiom Insights. If you're finding these episodes valuable for your English learning journey and you genuinely enjoy our explorations into the world of idioms, please take just a moment to subscribe or follow our podcast on your preferred listening platform. It really does help us.
Yes, absolutely. Subscribing is undoubtedly the best way to ensure you don't miss any of our future idiom adventures and linguistic discoveries. We have so much more planned. And if you're feeling extra supportive, a like or a positive rating on your podcast platform truly helps other English learners discover Idiom Insights and join our growing community. We are so incredibly grateful for your engagement and continued support. It really keeps us motivated and inspired to create more content for you.
It genuinely makes a massive difference to us and to the show's visibility. Thank you all so much for that. Right then, Emma, are you ready to uncover our first idiom, which, as I mentioned, sounds a bit deceptive and intriguing?
Let's certainly do it. Our first idiom for this episode of Idiom Insights is wolf in sheep's clothing.
Wolf in sheep's clothing. This one paints a very clear and rather sinister, almost folkloric picture. A dangerous, predatory wolf cunningly disguised as a gentle, harmless sheep. What does this idiom mean when we apply it to people, Emma? It sounds like a serious warning.
That vivid image is exactly the core of the idiom, Jack. A wolf in sheep's clothing is a person who appears to be friendly, harmless, kind, or innocent on the outside, perhaps even overtly charming, but is actually malicious, dangerous, exploitative, or has hidden negative intentions. They are fundamentally deceptive and cleverly hide their true harmful nature under a carefully constructed guise of gentleness, trustworthiness, or kindness.
So it's essentially about someone who is not what they seem, in a very negative and potentially harmful way. They try to lull you into a false sense of security with their sheep's clothing, their friendly appearance or smooth words, but underneath that facade, they are a wolf with bad intentions, waiting for an opportunity. For example, a con artist who acts incredibly charming and helpful to gain someone's trust, perhaps preying on their vulnerability, only to then cheat them out of their money, would be a classic wolf in sheep's clothing.
Precisely. That's a perfect illustration. Or consider a seemingly supportive colleague who always offers help and encouragement, but secretly undermines you to their superiors to get ahead in the company. They too could be described accurately as a wolf in sheep's clothing. The idiom powerfully emphasizes the hidden danger involved and the profound betrayal of trust that occurs when the truth is revealed. It's a potent warning that appearances can be very deceptive indeed, and someone who looks entirely harmless might actually be planning to cause significant harm or exploit others.
This powerful idiom has ancient origins, doesn't it? I believe it's from one of Aesop's fables, a story with a moral, and it's also referenced in the Bible, specifically in the New Testament. So this idea of a hidden enemy disguised as a friend, or a dangerous individual masquerading as someone benign, has been a human concern for a very, very long time.
You're absolutely right, Jack. It's a very old concept, highlighting a timeless human concern about deception, hypocrisy, and betrayal. The enduring power of the idiom lies in that stark, dramatic contrast between the innocent, appealing appearance and the dangerous, predatory reality lurking beneath. It's a metaphor that resonates across cultures and generations.
So, to give another example, if a new acquaintance seems almost overly friendly and exceptionally eager to help, perhaps too good to be true, but you have a persistent gut feeling that something isn't quite right, you might later discover they were a wolf in sheep's clothing if their true manipulative intentions eventually come to light, causing disappointment or even harm.
Exactly. It's often about that shocking and painful realization that someone you trusted, someone you thought was good and well-intentioned, is actually harmful, deceitful, or working against your best interests. The sense of betrayal can be quite profound.
Okay, so to summarize for our listeners, a wolf in sheep's clothing is a person who cleverly hides their malicious or dangerous nature behind a friendly, innocent, or harmless appearance. Are you ready to hear Mia and Mark use this idiom? Perhaps discussing someone they once trusted who let them down badly?
Let's listen in with anticipation. I wonder who turned out to be deceptive in their particular story.
Mark, do you remember Mr. Henderson, the investment advisor who so many people in our old neighborhood recommended so highly? He always seemed so incredibly kind and trustworthy, always talking about helping people secure their financial future. He had such a reassuring presence.
Oh yes, Mr. Henderson. He had such a gentle, grandfatherly manner, and he always brought those delicious homemade biscuits to his meetings. Everyone thought he was absolutely wonderful and so very reliable. Why, what about him? Has something happened?
Well, I was just reading an article online earlier today. It turns out he wasn't what he seemed at all, not by a long shot. He's been arrested for massive fraud. He was running a sophisticated Ponzi scheme, taking people's hard-earned life savings and using the money for his own lavish lifestyle, all while pretending to be this caring, responsible, and diligent advisor.
You're kidding me. Mr. Henderson? That's utterly shocking. I can barely believe it. He completely fooled everyone with his friendly, avuncular act and those biscuits. So he was basically a wolf in sheep's clothing the whole entire time?
Exactly. He meticulously crafted and used that kind, elderly gentleman persona to gain people's complete trust and confidence, and then he betrayed them terribly, leaving many in financial ruin. It's a truly horrible and devastating story. So many people have lost everything they worked for. It just goes to show you really can't always judge a book by its cover or a person by their outward appearance.
That was a chilling but absolutely perfect example. Mr. Henderson, with his friendly, trustworthy, and biscuit-offering appearance, turned out to be a deceitful and ruthless fraudster, making him a classic textbook example of a wolf in sheep's clothing. The betrayal must have been immense.
Yes, the idiom perfectly captured the profound betrayal and the hidden malicious nature lurking beneath his carefully maintained harmless exterior. It powerfully highlighted the deceptive tactics he employed to trick so many unsuspecting people out of their savings.
It's a very potent and widely understood idiom for describing that kind of dangerous, calculated deception. It really conveys the sense of shock and disgust one feels upon discovering such duplicity.
It certainly is. So, next time you encounter someone who seems utterly harmless, but you suspect might have hidden negative intentions or an ulterior motive, remember the very descriptive idiom, wolf in sheep's clothing.
And we genuinely love to hear if you've ever encountered a wolf in sheep's clothing. Hopefully not too often and without any serious consequences. Share your, perhaps anonymized for privacy, stories or observations in the comments section below this episode. Your experiences can be valuable for other learners too.
That's a great idea, Jack. Let's move on now to our second fascinating idiom in this episode of Idiom Insights. This one is all about expressing enthusiastic agreement.
Our second idiom today, and one you'll hear very frequently, is, "You can say that again."
You can say that again. Now, this is a phrase I hear all the time in movies and everyday conversations. On the surface, it sounds like you're literally asking someone to repeat what they've just said, but I have a strong feeling it means something more emphatic, right, Jack?
You're absolutely right, Emma. Your intuition is spot on. While literally it could mean, "Please repeat what you just said," the idiom, "You can say that again," is actually an emphatic and enthusiastic way of saying, "I completely and wholeheartedly agree with you," or "That is absolutely true and well said." It's used to show very strong agreement or to emphasize that you think what the other person said is incredibly accurate, pertinent, or insightful.
So it's a colloquial way of expressing wholehearted, unreserved agreement, almost as if the statement is so perfectly true or resonant that it's worth repeating for added emphasis, even though you don't actually expect the person to say it again. For example, if someone exclaims, "This traffic is absolutely terrible today," and you are also stuck in the same snarl up, feeling equally frustrated and completely agreeing with their sentiment, you might reply with conviction, "You can say that again. We've been crawling along here for nearly an hour."
Precisely. That's a perfect use case. Or if a friend sighs and says, "That exam was incredibly difficult. I'm not sure I passed," and you also found it exceptionally challenging, you'd likely respond with, "You can say that again. I don't think I answered half the questions properly myself." It powerfully reinforces their statement by showing your complete and utter accord with their assessment.
It's a very common, natural, and informal way to show solidarity or a shared opinion or feeling. It feels much stronger and more expressive than just saying a simple "I agree" or "Yes, that's true." It has a distinct sense of "You've hit the nail on the head," or "That's exactly what I was thinking. You took the words right out of my mouth."
It truly is. It's a vibrant way of enthusiastically confirming the truth, validity, or aptness of what someone else has just stated. It's almost like exclaiming, "That's so true. It bears repeating for everyone to hear," even though, as we said, you don't actually want them to repeat it. The emphasis is on the strength of your agreement.
So it's essentially an exclamation of strong, often immediate agreement, usually delivered with a certain level of feeling.
Yes, precisely, usually said with some noticeable emphasis, or even a tone of exasperation if it's about a shared negative experience.
So to recap for our listeners, "You can say that again" is an expression used to show very strong agreement with something someone has just said. Are you ready to hear Mia and Mark use this very common idiom?
Let's definitely listen in. I wonder what particular topic they will be agreeing so strongly and perhaps passionately about this time.
Mia, this new software update the company rolled out last week is driving me absolutely crazy. It's so much more complicated and less intuitive than the old version, and I keep getting these bizarre error messages. It's making my job so much harder and more time-consuming. I feel like I'm fighting it all day.
Oh, Mark, you can say that again. I spent the entire morning, literally hours, just trying to figure out how to do a simple reporting task that used to take me maybe 2 minutes flat. It's incredibly frustrating, completely counterintuitive, and not user-friendly at all. I don't know what they were thinking.
Exactly. And the worst part is, there was no proper training on it either. They just expect us all to magically figure it out on our own. It's a complete and utter nightmare, frankly. I sincerely wish they'd just go back to the old system that actually worked.
You can say that again. This update is a perfect example of making things demonstrably worse in the name of so-called progress or innovation. I've heard nothing but complaints from practically everyone in the department since it was installed. Morale is definitely down.
That dialogue clearly and effectively shows the idiom in action. Both Mia and Mark were experiencing significant frustration and annoyance with the new software, and when one of them made a statement about how bad or impractical it was, the other used, "You can say that again," to express their complete, unreserved, and enthusiastic agreement with that negative sentiment.
Exactly. It wasn't just a simple "I agree," it was a much stronger and more empathetic affirmation of their shared negative experience with the problematic software. It also helped to create a sense of camaraderie and mutual understanding in their shared frustration, which can be quite bonding.
It's a very natural and extremely common way to show strong agreement in everyday informal conversation. You'll hear it constantly once you start listening for it.
It truly is. So, next time you wholeheartedly agree with something someone says, and you really want to express that agreement strongly and clearly, remember the very useful idiom, "You can say that again."
And we'd be very interested to hear what statements make you want to exclaim, "You can say that again." Share your thoughts, experiences, or even pet peeves in the comments below the episode.
That's a wonderful idea, Jack. Let's move on now to our third fascinating idiom in this episode of Idiom Insights. This one describes how things, whether good or bad, can escalate from small beginnings.
Our third idiom for today, which creates a very vivid mental image, is snowball effect.
Snowball effect. This immediately makes me think of a small, innocent-looking snowball rolling down a long, snowy hill and progressively getting bigger and bigger, and also moving faster and faster as it accumulates more snow. Is that the fundamental idea behind this idiom, Jack?
That's the perfect and most accurate image. You've captured it precisely. The snowball effect describes a situation where something small or seemingly insignificant at the beginning starts to grow or increase in size, importance, impact, or momentum at an ever-increasing, often accelerating rate. Just like that snowball rolling down a snowy hill, gathers more snow and consequently becomes larger, heavier, and faster.
So it's about a relatively small starting point, leading to a much larger, often rapidly escalating outcome or consequence. And this can be positive or negative, right? For example, if a small local business gets a few genuinely good online reviews, a small positive start, that might lead to a few more customers, who then leave more good reviews, which in turn attracts even more customers, and so on. That would be a clear example of a positive snowball effect, leading to significant business growth and success.
Precisely. That's an excellent example of a positive application. Or on the negative side, consider if someone tells a small, seemingly harmless lie. They might then find they have to tell another slightly bigger lie to cover up the first one, and then perhaps another, even bigger and more elaborate lie to maintain the deception, until the situation has escalated dramatically into a huge, tangled mess of deceit that's hard to escape. That's also a snowball effect, where the initial small action led to increasingly larger and more serious negative consequences.
It strongly implies that once the snowball starts rolling, whether it's a positive trend or a negative problem, it can be quite difficult to stop or control, and its growth can become quite dramatic, rapid, and sometimes overwhelming. It really highlights the powerful idea of momentum and cumulative, accelerating growth.
Yes, absolutely. The key element is that initial small thing, that first push of the snowball, triggering a chain reaction of increasing scale, speed, or impact. You might talk about a rumor starting very small, perhaps as a whisper between two people, and then, through a snowball effect of people repeating it, embellishing it, and spreading it further, it rapidly becomes a huge, damaging scandal.
So it's essentially about how a seemingly minor action, event, or idea can have increasingly significant and widespread consequences over time, gathering its own momentum as it progresses.
Exactly. It perfectly captures that compelling idea of accelerating growth or impact from a very modest or insignificant beginning. It's a very visual and intuitive metaphor,
So the snowball effect describes a situation where something starts small but grows in size, importance, or momentum at an increasing, often alarming rate. Are you ready to hear Mia and Mark use this idiom in their conversation?
Let's listen in with interest. I wonder what small thing is escalating either positively or negatively in their particular story.
Mark, I'm getting really genuinely concerned about the amount of plastic waste our office is generating these days. It seemed to start with just a few people occasionally using disposable coffee cups, but now it seems like almost everyone is doing it, every single day. The bins are always full.
I know exactly what you mean, Mia. I think it all started when the good communal coffee machine broke down for about a week last month, and people started buying takeaway coffees from the cafe downstairs. But then, even after our machine was promptly fixed, the habit of buying takeaway coffees kind of stuck with some individuals, probably due to convenience.
Exactly, that was the catalyst. And then others saw them doing it, and perhaps thought it was more convenient or trendy, so they started too. And now, as you said, the bins in the kitchen and by our desks are overflowing with plastic cups, lids, and stirrers every single day. It's like a snowball effect. A small initial change, a temporary situation, has unfortunately led to this huge and worrying increase in daily plastic waste.
You're absolutely right. It's a classic textbook snowball effect. What began as a temporary solution for a few people has now somehow become a widespread and problematic habit for the many, contributing to a much larger environmental concern. We really need to do something collectively to try and reverse it before it gets even worse and becomes an accepted norm.
I completely agree. Maybe we can start a positive campaign to encourage the use of reusable cups again, perhaps with some incentives. We need to somehow stop that metaphorical snowball from growing any bigger, and ideally make it shrink.
That dialogue perfectly and clearly illustrates the snowball effect in a relatable workplace scenario. Mia and Mark discussed how a small initial behavior, a few people using disposable cups due to a broken coffee machine, gradually spread and grew in prevalence, leading to a much larger and more visible problem of plastic waste throughout the office.
Yes, the idiom effectively captured how the initial small action gained momentum and had increasingly significant and undesirable consequences, with more and more people adopting the habit over time. It really showed the accelerating and cumulative nature of the problem they were facing.
It's a very descriptive and useful idiom for situations where things escalate, often unexpectedly, from a relatively small or innocuous start. It can apply to trends, problems, successes, and many other evolving situations.
It certainly is. So, next time you observe a situation where something small is rapidly growing in importance, scale, or impact, remember the highly illustrative idiom snowball effect.
And we'd be fascinated to hear about a snowball effect you've witnessed, or perhaps even experienced yourself, whether it was positive or negative. Share your examples or stories in the comments section below the episode. These real-life examples are always so insightful.
That's a wonderful idea, as always, Jack. Now, we've arrived at our fourth and final idiom for this particular episode of Idiom Insights. This one is all about bringing something to a definitive end, often something that's no longer working.
Our final idiom for today, and another one with a strong visual, is pull the plug.
Pull the plug. This immediately sounds like it literally means pulling an electrical plug out of a wall socket, which would, of course, instantly stop a machine or an appliance from working by cutting off its power source. Is the meaning similar when we use it idiomatically, Jack?
That's exactly the core idea and the origin of the metaphor, Emma. To pull the plug on something means to stop it from continuing, to definitively discontinue it, or to withdraw essential support, like funding, resources, or effort, for it, especially when it's a project, an initiative, an activity, a business venture, or in a more literal and serious sense, some form of life support. Just like pulling the electrical plug stops a machine dead in its tracks, this idiom means to bring something to an often abrupt and decisive halt.
So it's about actively and consciously ending something, often because it's not proving successful, it's no longer viable, it's consuming too many resources without adequate return, or it's simply no longer wanted or needed. For example, if a company has invested a lot of money and time in developing a new product that unfortunately isn't selling well and is consistently losing money, the senior management might eventually make the tough decision to pull the plug on the product, meaning they will cease its production and stop trying to sell it to cut their losses.
Precisely. That's a very common business application. Or if a television show has consistently very low ratings and isn't attracting viewers or advertisers, the network executives might decide to pull the plug on it, meaning they will cancel the show and stop making any new episodes, effectively ending its run. It often implies a rather firm and final action to terminate something that is clearly failing or no longer sustainable.
It can also be used in more personal contexts, which can be equally difficult. For instance, if someone is providing ongoing financial support to an adult family member who isn't making a discernible effort to become independent or find work, they might eventually, after much deliberation, decide to pull the plug on that financial support to encourage the person to stand on their own 2 feet. It can be a very tough and emotionally charged decision.
Yes, it very often involves making a difficult, sometimes painful choice to stop something, especially if valuable resources like time, money, or emotional effort are being consistently wasted or drained. The phrase is also used, sometimes quite controversially and with great sensitivity, in medical context to refer to the decision to discontinue life support for a patient when there is tragically no hope of recovery. That's a very serious, literal, and profound application of the phrase.
So, it generally means to bring something to a definitive end, often something that has been ongoing for some time, by withdrawing essential support, making a direct decision to stop, or acknowledging that it cannot continue.
Exactly. It's a definitive, often irreversible stop. It signals a clear conclusion.
So, to summarize, to pull the plug means to stop something from continuing, to discontinue it, or to withdraw crucial support, especially for a project, business, activity, or in some cases, a life. Are you ready to hear Mia and Mark use this impactful idiom?
Let's certainly listen in. I wonder what project, venture, or perhaps even long-held plan they might be discussing ending in their conversation.
Mark, how's that new community garden project going that you and a few enthusiastic neighbors started last spring? You were all so incredibly enthusiastic and optimistic about it at the beginning, I remember.
Oh, the community garden. Well, Mia, to be perfectly honest with you, it hasn't really worked out as well as we all hoped and envisioned. We had a really great, promising start. Lots of people signed up initially, and we planted a vast array of vegetables and herbs. The first few weeks were buzzing with activity.
That sounds wonderful and so positive. So what's the problem then? Are the vegetables not growing, or is it something else? Pests, perhaps?
The vegetables actually grew reasonably okay, a bit patchy in places. But the main insurmountable problem has been the sustained commitment from people. After the initial burst of enthusiasm died down, most people gradually stopped showing up to help with the essential ongoing tasks like weeding, watering, composting, and general upkeep. It's ended up being just me and one other dedicated person, Sarah, doing all the considerable work for a huge plot, and frankly, it's just far too much for only 2 people to manage effectively. We're both completely exhausted, and sadly, the garden is starting to look quite neglected and overgrown.
Oh, that's a real shame, Mark, especially after all your initial hard work and shared excitement. It sounded like such a lovely idea for the neighborhood. So, what are you going to do now? Is there any way to revive it?
Well, we've tried really hard to get more people involved again. We've sent out reminder emails, put up notices in local shops and on the community notice board, but there's just no renewed interest or commitment anymore, it seems. So, very reluctantly, we've discussed it at length and decided we're going to have to pull the plug on the community garden project at the end of this current growing season. We simply don't have the human resources or the collective manpower to continue it. It's incredibly disappointing for both of us, but it's just not sustainable in its current form.
That dialogue clearly and poignantly illustrates the idiom in a very relatable community context. Mark explained that due to a significant lack of ongoing support and resources, specifically people's time and effort, they had to make the difficult and disheartening decision to pull the plug on the community garden project, meaning they were going to stop it and discontinue their efforts to maintain it.
Exactly. It effectively showed the idiom being used for a deliberate, albeit reluctant, decision to end an ongoing project that was unfortunately no longer viable or sustainable due to insufficient participation. The sense of an ending due to the withdrawal of necessary support, in this case the active involvement of the community members, was very clear and rather sad.
It's a very common and highly effective idiom for describing the act of stopping something, often something that was once hopeful or promising, but has encountered insurmountable difficulties.
It certainly is. So, next time you hear about a project, a business, an initiative, or some other activity being stopped or discontinued, especially due to a lack of success, funding, or crucial support. Remember the very expressive idiom, pull the plug.
And as always, we'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to pull the plug on something, or have you witnessed it happening in your personal or professional life? What was the situation and how did it feel? Share your experiences or observations in the comments below this episode.
We always genuinely appreciate reading your insightful comments and diverse stories. Well, Emma, we've explored 4 more really useful, vivid, and expressive idioms in this episode of Idiom Insights. It's been another great session.
We certainly have, Jack. It feels like our listeners are getting a fantastic toolkit of phrases. Just to quickly recap for everyone tuning into Idiom Insights today, the 4 idioms we learned and discussed are
wolf in sheep's clothing, which describes a person who appears friendly or harmless on the surface but is actually dangerous, malicious, or deceitful underneath.
You can say that again. A very common expression used to show strong, enthusiastic agreement with what someone has just said.
Snowball effect, which describes a situation where something relatively small at the start grows in size, importance, or momentum at an ever-increasing, often accelerating rate.
And finally, pull the plug, which means to stop something from continuing, to definitively discontinue it, or to withdraw essential support, often for a project, business, or activity.
4 more fantastic and highly practical additions to your ever-expanding English idiom collection. Remember, listeners, the absolute best way to truly master these phrases and make them your own is to actively listen for them in conversations, movies, podcasts, and written materials, and then to gain confidence by consciously trying to use them yourself in appropriate situations. Don't be shy.
Absolutely. Practice is undeniably key when it comes to language learning. Don't be afraid to incorporate these idioms into your speaking and writing. The more you actively use them in relevant contexts, the more comfortable and natural they will feel, and the more fluent your English will become.
And if you enjoyed learning with us today, and we sincerely hope you did find it both enjoyable and beneficial, please do consider giving this episode of Idiom Insights a like, and perhaps leaving us a positive review on your podcast platform of choice. Your valuable support really does help other English learners find us and join our wonderful global community.
And most importantly, make sure you hit that subscribe or follow button for Idiom Insights so you don't miss any of our future episodes, where we'll continue our mission to demystify the wonderful, colorful, and sometimes witty world of English idioms, one phrase at a time.
Thank you all so very much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure exploring these fascinating phrases with you all. We look forward to having you with us next time.
Keep learning, keep listening, keep practicing, and we'll talk to you again very soon on the next episode of Idiom Insights.
Goodbye, everyone, and take care.
See ya!